How Breaking Bad pulled off an impossibly perfect finale. Shout out to Nerdstalgic for the original video. Let's get watching.
One more time that you did this for the family.
I did it for me.
This is Felina, the final episode of Breaking Bad. In the same way that Walt is a perfect anti-hero, Felina is a perfect finale. To fully understand the gravity of Breaking Bad's finale, we have to remember that this is a show about a suburban high school teacher's slow descent into the criminal underground. Walt's terminal cancer diagnosis in the first episode is the spark that slowly burns a path of destruction through his life and everyone around him, until it becomes a raging fire of pride and moral degradation. But whether you see Walt as a good man who made bad choices for the sake of his family, or a bad man who finally found a reason to act on his worst impulses, Felina is a fitting end. It's a perfect example of what made Breaking Bad, and particularly the character of Walter White, great in the first place. Its willingness to explore dubious morality in ways that are equal parts heartwarming, heartbreaking, and horrifying remain unmatched on television to
I see a comment section on like a lot of shorts, and these shorts say this is the moment when Walter became Heisenberg. Well, Walter was Heisenberg all along. Heisenberg was literally the manifested form of Walter. He did not become Heisenberg. He was all along Heisenberg.
this day. Vince Gilligan's writing and directing make for an episode chock full of suspense and restrained intensity, and supported by the rest of the absolutely stellar cast. Bryan Cranston's performance in Felina is truly haunting in every sense of the word. He presents himself like an angry, exhausted ghost who can only be allowed into the afterlife after righting all his wrongs and tying up all his loose ends while determined to do it all on his terms. It's true that Felina is basically the Walter White wish fulfillment happy hour, yet despite the actual content of the episode, the way Felina is shot never lets us forget that his actions are monstrous.
He's alive, isn't he? He's cooking for you. What, are you gonna lie?
After seeing his old colleagues disparage him and minimize his contributions to gray matter technologies, Walt decides to flee his New Hampshire hideout and head back to Albuquerque at the beginning of the episode. Like a man possessed, he heads straight to Gretchen and Elliot's new home.
Yo, I'm not gonna lie. Gretchen and Elliot are kind of jerks. Alright, they're kind of dickheads. Okay? I do not like them. I don't think anybody likes them. Like, they're just. First of all, they're absolutely degrading to Walt. That they just completely disassociated with him ever since they found out that he was behind all this, the drug rings and all that. But they literally just completely forgot who he was. Like, they just pretended like he never even existed. And that's just like so fake.
Terrorizes them into setting up a trust fund for his son under threat of assassination. These assassins turn out to be Badger and Skinny Pete with laser pointers. But nevertheless, the Schwartz family is
Yeah, that was a really smart prank.
sufficiently scared into doing Walt's bidding. For Walt and the audience, this is pretty satisfying. He gets exactly what he wants in characteristically clever and ruthless ways. On the surface, this looks like a straight-up win for Walt, but the way the scene is shot says otherwise. The way he lurks in the shadows at the Schwartz's house and follows them inside is straight out of a Halloween movie. Jessica Hecht and Adam Godley's terrified performance here tells the audience all they need to know. Walt is the villain. After learning from Badger and Skinny Pete that Jesse is alive and cooking,
Jesse.
Walt retrieves the ricin from his old house. Like a killer returning to the scene of a crime, he surveys the place. It's a shell of its former self, same as Walt, and he reminisces about his 50th birthday party.
Keep in mind, this happened in the span of 2 years. This wasn't 10 years. This was just 2 years. So much has happened. Just 2 years. Oh my
Single
gosh.
shot of Bryan Cranston's
2 years.
expressive face confirms that the audience that Walter White isn't making it out of this episode alive. Later, Walt interrupts Todd and Lydia, offering to teach Todd a new method of cooking that doesn't require any methylamine. After a brief conversation in which Walt brilliantly plays the role of a desperate man running out of time, Lydia tells Walt to meet with Jack Welker, Todd's uncle, later that night. But she has no intention of hearing Walt out. The scene ends with a tight shot of her dumping stevia into
I'm not gonna lie, the ricin and the stevia, she absolutely deserved that. She was a piece of crap. All right, she was absolutely a piece of crap.
her tea, as she always does. The audience gets a quick scene of Walt crafting something out in the desert that he's hooked up to his car keys before one of the most memorable moments in the entire series. His conversation with Skylar. The one where he says goodbye and finally confesses to his wife and to the audience that he enjoyed what he did, that it made him feel alive.
That's
While Bryan
real.
Cranston gives the performance of a lifetime through the entire episode, this scene is especially exemplary, and Anna Gunn is similarly incredible. You can really feel the grief, loss, and exhaustion between the two characters. But you can also sense Walt's fixation on his goals, and Skylar's terror at facing down the man she can barely recognize as her ex-husband. He says
I mean, I'm not surprised that Walt went down this path. Okay, let's analyze this for a second. Walter is a loser teacher at a high school that nobody respects him. No student respects him. Not even his own family really even respects him. He's literally the most timid person in the family, has the most regrets in life of the family. And then he gets cancer. If I were him, I don't want to say anything on YouTube like that, but I'm just saying, who wouldn't go down the same path if they had the same life as Walter? I'm just saying.
goodbye to first his daughter and then his son in his own way. For Walt, these goodbyes are tender moments, but once again, the way the sequence is shot betrays Walt's vision. Initially, it looks like Skylar is alone in her apartment, but the camera moves in to reveal Walt standing menacingly in the corner like a monster,
That was some good cinematography.
waiting for the right time to strike. Even withered and haggard, this man is an imposing figure. When Walt says goodbye to Holly, Skylar is seeing a man capable of horrible deeds caressing her defenseless sleeping child. And then Walt silently watches his son return home from school through a window in a shot that, without context, looks like a stalker targeting their victim. While the audience is still rooting for Walt to finish what he set out to do, we're keenly aware of just how dangerous he is. So this makes the final act of Felina when Walt pays a final visit to Jack Welkner's gang.
Oh, yeah. I gotta say, out of the entire series, Walt has a lot of like really smart contraptions, but this one by far has got to be the smartest thing he's ever done. And I'm talking by the standards that he blew up Gus Fring through through Hector, his arch enemy. This guy built a mechanism where he opens the trunk and a carbine machine gun just starts spraying out of the car into Jack Welker's gang. And that was honestly a really cool scene.
An incredible, thrilling affair. After some goading on the part of Walt, Jack Welker parades Jesse out in front of him. Walt fiddles with his keys before tackling Jesse to the ground and hitting his key fob, which unleashes yet another iconic moment from the finale onto the unsuspecting gang. The contraption Walt was rigging up in the desert turns out to be the M60 set to fire automatically from the trunk of Walt's car. Everyone except for Walt
I don't know how Vince Gilligan comes up with these ideas, but he's a genius when it comes to writing.
Jesse, Jack, and Todd are killed in a storm of bullets. The audience then watches Jesse snap Todd's neck, which certainly made people stand up and cheer, and then in an
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, Todd's a psychopath.
even more satisfying moment, Walt shoots Jack mid-sentence, the way Jack did to Hank earlier in the season. With everyone else dead, this leaves Jesse and Walt to have a brief standoff, where Jesse notices Walt was shot by the machine gun. Walt wants Jesse to kill him, but he refuses. Finally, after 5 seasons, Jesse rebuffs Walt.
I'm not gonna lie, out of the entire series, Jesse seems to be the only one with like a conscience on him. Out of like the main like drug cook guys and all that stuff. He's the only one that actually has like morals and standards that he likes to go by, even though he works in the dirtiest business ever, which was kind of ironic. Not gonna lie.
Walt's orders.
Then do it yourself.
Instead of killing him, Jesse chooses to leave his former partner standing alone among a pile of bodies. A phone rings and Walt answers it only to hear Lydia on the other end asking if everything had gone to plan and that Walt is dead. Instead, Walt informs her that earlier that day he poisoned the stevia Lydia used for her tea with
Deserved.
ricin, essentially handing his former supplier a death sentence. This is a great payoff, and killing Lydia by taking advantage of her overly
Dude. Lydia is completely unrecognizable. Like, I could barely tell that it's her. Like, I had to hear the name Lydia to know that that was Lydia. Lydia in this clip compared to normal Lydia, oh my gosh. They did a really good job at making her look really sick.
death sentence. This is a great payoff, and killing Lydia by taking advantage of her overly detailed schedule is especially gratifying. But the scene is deeply reminiscent of several iconic horror movie phone calls, which once again positions Walt as the villain of the story. The audience gets one final wordless goodbye between Walt and Jesse before Jesse speeds off into the night in a flood of emotion. Seeing Jesse finally free of his life and the torture he was put through is maybe the happiest moment in the whole episode. And it's no coincidence that it's framed like the final girl barely escaping with their life at the end of a horror movie. But that isn't how the episode ends. This is, at the end
It was a very human reaction to laugh maniacally.
of the day, still Walt's story, and he finds himself alone and bleeding out. Rather than spending his last moments close to his family or using his last breath to say a single kind word about his partner, Walt hobbles over to the lab to die like a contented dog at the feet of his master. He walks among the equipment in an almost nostalgic reverence as police sirens wail in the distance. Badfinger's Baby Blue plays us out as Walt takes a look at his reflection before dying on the floor of the lab while police swarm the building.
This is probably the most iconic death scene ever because we have to analyze here that Walt finally feels satisfied with himself. He finally feels happy with himself and accomplished, even though that his life is coming to an end. He feels complete, and that wasn't even through family. It was through doing bad things like cooking meth, but he felt alive, and that's kind of like his way of getting out of his suppressed character that he really wanted to show all along.
We as an audience can see purely by the look on his face that Walt is satisfied.
I could have sworn I watched this death scene like 6 times, and I still wasn't tired of it.
More than that, he's proud. For a man who once claimed,
I'm in the empire business.
there's no better way to go out than surrounded by the product you developed after crossing out every item on your bucket list. And that's how Breaking Bad ends. A man gets everything he ever wanted at the expense of everyone else in his life. And he
I do feel bad for his family though. This is just one big fiasco.
ultimately dies by self-inflicted wounds. Literally. There's a sort of ironic tragedy to the whole thing. And it reminds the
Yeah. The fact that he didn't even die of cancer. He died of his contraption. His cancer was supposed to kill him on the day that he died of his contraption. What's the irony in that? That's all the irony.
audience that outside of this charitable narrative Walt has built for himself over the course of 5 seasons, he has in actuality become a monster, a villain.
Oh yeah, Walter's probably the most evil guy in the series.
Hey, are you still alive? Why don't you just die already? Just die.
The beauty of Breaking Bad is that everyone who watches it comes away with a
Sad.
different experience. And the finale is no different. When Walt finally dies, you can see his last actions as a tying up of loose ends and a triumph of achievement. Or you can see it as the end of a horrifying ordeal for a family haunted by the enraged spirit of their husband, father, and friend. Or maybe it's somewhere in between. But no matter where you stand on Walter White's morality, it can't be denied that Breaking Bad had the perfect series finale. And that's all we have for you today. If you're still here, be sure to like this video.
It was not a very Hollywoodian, because, Usually in movies or in shows, they'll have like a happy ending with a marriage and a family and no more problems in this world. That's not how life works. You see, there is no happy ending where everything is going to be perfect forever. That's what I don't like about this cliche types of endings. But this show, Breaking Bad, has a good ending because it's realistic. There, you can execute a good ending with it being realistic. Like the good part of it is that he feels whole now. Maybe I'm talking out of my elbows here, but I think that's why everybody likes Breaking Bad more than typical movies and stuff like that with the happy endings, everything's gonna be perfect forever. That's not how life works. With how in depth every single character is in the series, watching this ending is very satisfying. A lot of shows don't know how to execute their endings well, but this show did it amazingly. Now, I'm yet to watch Better Call Saul, but when I do, it's probably going to be a little bit better than this because same writer, improved skills. That's it. That's the video.